Hey everyone, it's the Diplomat coming to you from the USA, and we are on part 19 of the Chris Watts Discovery Read-Through, beginning here on Discovery page 360. We just finished up the interviews with Luke and Melissa from Anadarko, and we are about to go through a couple of interviews by the FBI with Nick and Amanda. This was friends of the Watts, and this is also where Chris stayed for a day or two while everything was going down. So this date of entry is August 22nd, but the actual interview took place on August 15th. And this is by FBI agent Hause, Hause. Amanda was contacted at her residence. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agent and the nature of the interview, Amanda provided the following information. Amanda is a child care director at the Goddard School in Colorado. She has a bachelor's degree in human development and family studies. Amanda met Shanann in approximately August 2016 in Erie, Colorado. At that time, Amanda was the director at the Primrose School where Shanann's girls, Bella and Celeste, attended. Amanda got to know Shanann as a parent of the girls. Amanda and Shanann talked every day at drop-offs and pickups. Amanda gave Shanann her telephone number to arrange playdates. Their first playdate was in February 2017, which was attended by Amanda and Shanann, as well as their husbands Nick and Chris. Their friendship blossomed. They talked every day and hung out 3 out of every 4 weekends. Their girls became close as well. Shanann sold products from home through a company called Lavelle. Lavelle salespeople are known as quote-unquote thrivers. Shanann and Amanda communicated via telephone, text, and in person. They texted daily and talked on the telephone almost daily. Amanda and Nick previously lived near Shanann in Frederick, Colorado. When they moved to Thornton, Colorado in June 2018, Amanda and Shanann talked less since Amanda was busy with work and the move. Amanda started employment at the Goddard School in March 2018. Amanda saw Shanann approximately once per month since moving to Thornton. Chris and Shanann came to the house, and the two families attended Movie in the Park night in Frederick in June. Throughout the duration of the interview, Amanda referred to her cell phone to aid in the recollection of dates, times, and contexts of phone calls, travels, and text messages. Shanann and Chris went to San Diego on June 22, 2018 for the weekend and came home on June 25, 2018. Shanann's dad came to visit on June 28, 2018. On approximately June 29, 2018, Shanann, the girls, and her dad flew to North Carolina to visit family for 6 weeks. They returned home around August 4th or August 5th, 2018. Last Thursday, August 10th, 2018, Shanann traveled to Arizona and got home Monday morning. Amanda stated the last time she saw Chris was on July 4th, 2018 at the Thornton Recreation Center for the fireworks show. Amanda went with Nick and her daughter, Amelie, and her brother-in-law and sister-in-law. At that time, Shanann was in North Carolina. Amanda overheard Chris talking to Nick about Shanann trying to FaceTime Chris, but the service wasn't great. Chris was telling Nick he tries to hide if he's having any fun when Shanann's out of town because it upsets her. Chris further stated that if he doesn't answer his phone, like when he's in the shower or working out, Shanann gets upset. Amanda had a telephone conversation with Shanann just before Shanann and the girls left for North Carolina. Shanann told Amanda that she and Chris were very close, like their hands were all over each other. Amanda's brother recently passed away, and Shanann had been comforting her recently. On Thursday, August 9th, 2018, Amanda texted Shanann to see if she was available for a three-way call to discuss Lavelle business issues. Shanann responded by texting saying she was available, then stated, "Sorry for being so distant, a lot is going on personally," in quotes. Amanda asked if she was okay and if she wanted to talk. Shanann responded, in quotes, "Way too much to text." Amanda asked Shanann to call her. Amanda and Shanann began a phone conversation on August 9, 2018 at 7 a.m. Amanda stated the following about that conversation. The first week, Shanann and the girls were in North Carolina. She and Chris had a lot of phone sex at that time. Shanann also said there was an incident involving Chris's mother involving ice cream. All the grandkids were over at the house and the girls wanted ice cream. However, Celeste is allergic. One of the other children got ice cream with peanuts and Celeste asked for some. When Chris's mom said no, an argument between Shanann and Chris's mom ensued about Shanann coddling Celeste and about the treatment of her kids in general. Chris flew to North Carolina to join the family during the last week there. Chris was very distant. He didn't run to her and kiss her at the airport when they picked him up. Chris was not interested in taking pictures together, which was very unusual. At certain times, Chris didn't want to hug her and told her he didn't want to. Chris was not communicating and Shanann felt lost. While in North Carolina, Celeste had a birthday party. Chris's mother and father didn't show up and also didn't text Shanann or Chris. Since that time, Chris started to get distant from Shanann. Shanann thought Chris's parents loved the other grandkids more than Celeste and Bella. It was a burden for them to talk to Celeste and Bella. Chris's parents also did not attend Shanann's and Chris's wedding. Chris told Shanann that Shanann was putting a barrier between Chris and his dad. Chris told Shanann that they were no longer compatible. Chris told her he didn't want the baby, he just wanted it to be the two girls. Chris told her he wasn't sure if he wanted a third child. Shanann asked Chris why he wanted another child if he felt that way about her. He said he thought it would fix the relationship. They were having a lot of sex. Prior to the North Carolina trip, Shanann and Chris were both happy, and Chris was excited about the baby. Chris said he was considering separating from Shanann. Shanann asked Chris to see a therapist, but he refused. Shanann was 100% against separation. Chris wouldn't talk to her. During the above conversation, Amanda suggested to Shanann that she and Chris go away for the weekend of August 17th, 2018. Amanda offered to watch the kids and the dog. Shanann texted back on August 9th, 2018 at 1:15 p.m. and stated, in quotes, "Chris agreed to go away, which I am in total shock. Sure you don't mind? Friday or Saturday, what day works for you?" End quotes. Amanda was at work, so she didn't respond. Shanann texted again at 6:18 p.m. in quotes. "If we left Friday, what time could you be here? After 6 o'clock?" End quote. Amanda said yes, and Shanann agreed. Amanda stated that was the last text she received from Shanann. Amanda traveled to Kentucky for her brother's funeral. When she arrived there, she texted Shanann on Friday, August 10th, 2018, at 8 p.m. Amanda asked Shanann if she had found out the sex of the baby. There was no response from Shanann, which was unusual. Amanda sent a message via Facebook Messenger to mutual friend Cassandra and told her she hadn't heard from Shanann. Amanda and Cassandra talked. On Monday, August 13, 2018, Amanda and Nick arrived back in Colorado from Kentucky at approximately 2:30 p.m. Amanda had a few messages from friends of Shanann. They were asking if Amanda heard from Shanann. Amanda texted Shanann at 2:57 p.m. in quotes, "Hey lady, we just got back. Let's chat about this weekend." End quote. Amanda received a familiar auto reply from Shanann that she used whenever she was driving. In quotes, "Safety first, I'm driving with do not disturb. While driving turned on. I'll see your message when I get where I'm going." End quote. The last part of the auto reply had some extra wording Amanda hadn't seen before, which stated, in quotes, "I'm not receiving notifications. If this is urgent, reply urgent to send a notification through with your original message." End quotes. Amanda sent one more message to Shanann asking when Shanann was getting back to Colorado, but received no response. Cassandra called Amanda at 4:09 p.m. on August 13, 2018. They talked about Shanann being missing and shared thoughts. At 4:17 p.m. on August 13, 2018, Nicole called Amanda. Nicole is also a Lavelle thriver. Nicole was upset about Shanann disappearing. Nicole talked to police. Nicole told Amanda that Shanann's purse, car, phone, and the girls' medications were all at the house. Nicole was aware of the neighbor's security camera which showed Chris backing up his truck and heading to work. Nicole said Chris had stuff in his garage for work. Nicole told Amanda that Chris's story had changed. Chris said Shanann was leaving with the girls for a playdate at 5:30 a.m. Amanda stated she could not recall what other story Chris had told. Nicole further told Amanda that Chris told Cassandra one thing and told Nicole another thing. When Amanda and Nick arrived home from their Kentucky trip and were unpacking, they were worried about Chris, so Nick texted Chris. Amanda and Nick decided to go see Chris. They arrived at Chris's house around 6 or 6:30 p.m. They asked Chris what happened and where was Shanann, what was known and not known. Chris's phone was, quote-unquote, blowing up. While standing inside the home near the doorway, Chris told Amanda and Nick the following. Chris and Shanann were having problems and were separating. Around 4 a.m. that morning, Chris got up for work and Shanann got up with him. He wanted to get it out and be done with it. Chris told Shanann he wanted a separation and wanted to sell the house. They had been talking about selling the house for weeks. Amanda stated that Shanann had not told her about that. Chris said things are really tight, and they wanted a smaller house because they didn't need all that room. Chris said they got that house because it was like Shanann's house in North Carolina, and it made her happy. When Chris left for work, Shanann was emotional and crying. Chris got a call from Nicole around 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. Nicole had been trying to get a hold of Shanann. Nicole went to the house but couldn't get in. When Chris got home, Nicole had called the police. He saw Nicole peeking in the windows, trying to get in. Chris opened the door and Nicole let herself in and started searching the house. Nicole was telling her son where to go and where to look at places in the house. Amanda stated that by that time in the conversation, they had moved into the kitchen. Chris was pacing. Amanda recalled asking him questions about the windows and doors and if they were locked. Chris seemed numb and lost. His face looked like Amanda's when she lost her brother, almost like not believing it. Chris said that he noticed a taxicab charge on his credit card statement, which posted August 13th. Amanda asked Nicole whom Shanann traveled to Arizona with, if she and Shanann took a taxi ride. Nicole told Amanda she and Shanann took one Lyft ride. Chris mentioned that it was too quiet in the house. He just wanted to hug and hold them, wanted them all to come back. Chris stated, "It's empty here. I need my family back," in quotes. Chris talked about how bizarre it was that Shanann didn't have her phone with her. Chris, Amanda, and Nick talked about going door to door to ask neighbors questions, but they found out the police were doing that. Amanda and Nick were trying to call people for any information. Chris said he had called the hospitals in the area. Amanda and Nick stayed at Chris's house until approximately 8 p.m. They offered to have Chris stay the night at their home. Chris said he wanted to stay at his house in case they came back, and he wanted to clean up the kids' toys. Chris said, in quotes, "I want to clean up for them when they come home," in quotes. Amanda got the impression that Chris thought Shanann left just because she was angry. The next day, August 14, 2018, Amanda and Nick were with Chris most of the day. They arrived at Chris's house around 9 a.m. and stayed until approximately 4 p.m. There was a lot of silence during the day. They talked about the news crews. Some canines walked through the house, and police were all around. Amanda was spending time on Facebook providing updates. Chris mentioned that his dad was coming to town. Shanann's mother called Chris and was disrespectful to him. Amanda and Nick invited Chris to spend the night at their house, and Chris accepted. Amanda and Nick returned home. Chris still had news people at his house and waited until they left. In anticipation of Chris coming to the house, Amanda and Nick ordered pizza. 15 or 20 minutes later, Nick told Amanda that Chris was going to get interviewed by the FBI. Amanda and Nick went to the Frederick Police Department at approximately 7:30 p.m., where they waited in the car until approximately 11 p.m., when Chris came out. Chris said he wasn't allowed to go to his house since they were searching it that night and in the morning. Chris followed Amanda and Nick to their house. At Nick and Amanda's home, Chris talked about how the interview went. He said one guy interviewed him and was aggressive and accusatory, asking, in quotes, "What did you do with your wife and children?" End quote. The interviewer then went back to, quote-unquote, nice talk and being supportive. Chris stated he was asked the same question multiple times in different ways. He was asked about a polygraph and said he would take one. At one point, the interviewer left and came back and told Chris to come back in the morning for a polygraph. Amanda, Nick, and Chris all went to bed. The morning of August 15th, 2018, Amanda and Nick awoke at approximately 6 a.m. and took their daughter to school. Chris was still upstairs. Chris came down approximately 10 minutes after Amanda and Nick returned. Amanda stated Chris seemed like a lost puppy and was pacing. Chris said he was going to go to work, but his work told him no. Chris was waiting to hear from his mom about his dad's flight. Chris left around 9:30 a.m. to get his dad from the airport. Chris and Shanann shared their Lexus. They previously had an Explorer, but were currently just using the Lexus and his work truck. Chris worked at an oil company in the oil fields where he does maintenance. Shanann never mentioned anything about their financial situation. Amanda stated Shanann had lots of clothes and had her nails done about every 2 weeks. Shanann never said a word to Amanda about Chris seeing other women. At one point, Shanann speculated about Chris maybe having an affair, but dismissed it because Chris, quote-unquote, didn't have game. Amanda stated she left a message with the detective about the fact that Shanann always wore her iWatch, which was missing. Amanda stated she would preserve all of the phone, text, and calendar data on her phone. Okay, the following page is mostly blank. We go into a cover sheet on 367. It's another physical 1A, 1C cover sheet, and this is regarding the interview notes of Amanda, completed by FBI agent House. The next page says file note, notes corresponding to House report 9, dated August 22nd, 2018, have been requested and will be provided upon receipt. Next page, 369. Now we have the FBI interview of Nick, and this is also by Agent House. The date of entry is August 22nd, and it's also August 15th when this took place. Nick was interviewed at his residence. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agent and the nature of the interview, Nick provided the following information. Nick is employed as a media director for Prop Inc. in Greenwood Village. Nick obtained a high school diploma. Nick's wife Amanda and Shanann set up a play date for the kids in approximately April 2017. Nick met Chris at that play date at the park in Frederick. That summer, Nick and Amanda saw them almost every weekend at each other's homes and going out to dinner. In the fall of 2017, Chris started getting into running. Nick and Chris ran at times through the winter on weekends. Chris said he was working out at the Frederick Recreation Center. They didn't share much personal talk. Chris was self-contained and didn't offer much. Nick was also friends with Shanann. They all got along. Nick and Chris mostly communicated through texting about going for runs, sports in general, or making plans for the weekends. There were not many phone calls. Nick and Amanda moved to Thornton, Colorado in June 2018. Nick and Amanda saw Shanann and Chris less. Shanann and the kids went to North Carolina for 6 weeks in June 2018. Chris joined them in North Carolina during their last week there, and they all flew back together. Nick and Amanda saw Chris on the 4th of July at the fireworks show in Thornton. Nick asked Chris a question along the lines of, "What's it like to be a bachelor?" in quotes. Chris responded that it was weird being in an empty home and that he was working out all the time. Chris said that Shanann got upset because he missed one of her phone calls. Chris added that at any time he's working out, he runs upstairs when she calls, and he hides that he's doing stuff without Shanann and the girls. Nick had no other indication from Chris about the status of their relationship other than those examples. Nick thought that perhaps Shanann and Chris were married in 2012. Nick stated that he and Chris didn't see each other much and didn't talk much. However, they both signed up for a running race in September 2018. Chris sent Nick a text message photograph of his race shirt and bib number. The two exchanged a few texts regarding the upcoming race. When Chris and Shanann got back from North Carolina, Shanann and Amanda talked for about 45 minutes. Amanda told Nick that Chris and Shanann weren't doing well in their marriage. Amanda asked Nick if Nick saw the post Shanann made about Celeste in North Carolina, to which Nick said he had. Nick and Amanda thought maybe that issue was part of the problem. Nick was aware that Shanann didn't get along with Chris's parents. Nick received a text from Amanda while he was at work. Amanda told him that Shanann wanted them to watch the kids while Shanann and Chris went away for the weekend of August 17, 2018. Nick said okay. Nick and Amanda got back from their Kentucky trip on Monday, August 13th around 3 or 4 p.m. Nick texted Chris to see if Chris wanted to do some more runs before the September run. Nick provided the following texts from his cell phone. Monday, 4:07 p.m. Hey man, we just got back into town. When can you run? Chris responded, Not sure, man. I can't find Shanann or the kids. Haven't heard from them all day. Cops are here. I will keep you posted. Nick, Whoa, what? That is crazy, man. Is there anything I can do? Chris, I don't know, man. It's very odd right now. Nick, we can head up there. Bring you some food? We are here for you. Nick and Amanda went to Chris's house and rang the bell. Chris answered the door. In describing Chris's appearance, Nick stated, in quotes, "It wasn't Chris," end quote. Nick stated that Chris appeared different, overwhelmed, like, in quotes, "What is going on?" end quote. At that point, the cops were gone. Nick, Amanda, and Chris stood inside by the front door. Nick and Amanda were asking Chris questions about what happened, but Nick could not remember exactly what they asked. Chris told Nick and Amanda the following. Shanann and Chris were having marital issues. In parentheses, Nick stated that Amanda spoke up and said that Shanann had told her about the marital issues. That morning when Chris woke up for work, he told Shanann that he wanted to separate. Chris told her before he went to work because he wanted to tell her in person rather than by text or phone. Chris left for work. Nick stated that Chris did not comment on how Shanann was doing when he left. When Chris was at work, Nicole began texting him that she couldn't get a hold of Shanann, and that Nicole was at their house. Chris headed for home. On the way, he called the girls' school. He was told they hadn't checked in. Chris told the school to keep the girls on the wait list. When Chris got home, the cops were there and did a walk around. The cops came back with a warrant for a more in-depth search. The cops offered Chris a chance to walk around and search with them, but he said he'd wait outside. Nick, Amanda, and Chris continued talking at the kitchen table. Chris continued. Chris said the cops took Shanann's cell phone. The neighbors showed the cops the security footage of him loading up his truck and leaving that morning. But the footage showed nothing after that. The video doorbell didn't show anything. Chris saw a credit card charge for a taxi cab, but didn't know anything else about it. Chris didn't know what to think or do. Nick stated that while the three of them were brainstorming about what they could be doing, Chris stated, in quotes, "Do I walk out into the field to look for someone?" End quote. Nick stated that Chris made no comments about the fact that Shanann was gone, but all her stuff was still there. When Amanda mentioned Shanann's items that were still in the house, Chris confirmed those items as being her phone, purse, wallet, wedding ring, car seats, and the kids' medicine. Based on all those items being left behind, Chris indicated that he thought Shanann just left. Nick stated that Chris was in the process of calling and texting Shanann's friends. Amanda said she heard about a potential Amber Alert. Chris said he had been contacting emergency rooms before Nick and Amanda arrived. Nick stated that Chris seemed like he was just trying to process everything. He put his head down a lot. He didn't know what to do. Chris told Nick he didn't want to talk to the news media because they might pry and turn his words around. Chris knew how it would look and he would be, quote-unquote, public enemy number one. Nick stated, quote-unquote, he was worried about that. Amanda invited Chris to stay at their house. Chris said he wouldn't that night, but he would the next night. Amanda and Chris went home around 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. When they got home, they texted Chris at 9:33 p.m. They told Chris they had stopped at McDonald's and the gas station at I-25 and Highway 52 to see if anyone there saw anything. Chris responded at 9:43 p.m. stating, quote-unquote, thanks, man. On Tuesday morning, August 14th, 2018, Nick texted Chris to see if he was going to work. Chris said he didn't get much sleep and was going to stay home. Nick and Amanda took their daughter to school. Nick texted Chris at 8:30 a.m. on August 14th, 2018, to ask if he'd heard anything from the police. Chris responded, nothing yet, in quotes. The two texted back and forth briefly. Nick and Amanda drove to Chris's house. On the way there, the news media started contacting them. When they arrived at Chris's house, they found Chris to be tired, not himself, and overwhelmed. The three sat at the kitchen table. They talked about the possibility of Nick and Amanda talking to the media about the media talking to Chris. During the afternoon on Tuesday, Nick overheard a telephone call between Chris and either his mom or Shanann's mother. Chris made a comment along the lines of, in quotes, "The longer this goes on, the more I worry that they might be hurt or in danger," end quote. Chris stated that he had received a text from a realtor on Monday night. Chris told Nick and Amanda that he and Shanann had talked about putting the house on the market. The house was too big and too much of a financial burden, and they wanted to downgrade. Chris said he wasn't sure if that is what made Shanann mad at him, although Chris hadn't talked about Shanann being mad before that moment. Chris was wondering if, in quotes, that's what started all this. Chris made no mention about having any girlfriends. Nick and Amanda left Chris's house just before 4 p.m. in order to pick up their daughter from school. They offered to have Chris stay at their house that night. Chris agreed to it. Chris said he would be over in a little bit. When Nick and Amanda arrived at their home, Nick called Chris. Chris said he was coming over. Chris called Nick about 10 minutes later and said that Fox News was still in his front yard. Chris was concerned about how it would look if he was seen leaving his house with a bag of clothes. At around 6:20 p.m., Nick texted Chris again. Chris said he was just leaving his house. Approximately 20 minutes later, Chris called. He told Nick that Frederick Police Department wanted him to come talk to an FBI agent. Nick responded via text stating that he and Amanda would go there and offer support. Chris responded in quotes, "Thanks, man." Nick and Amanda went to the Frederick Police Department. Chris came out around 11 p.m. Chris gave a brief summary of the interview, but they all decided to talk more once they got home. At the house, Chris said the interview was intense. He stated it was like being interviewed by 3 people, all by one person. He stated they had his phone and asked him all about stuff in his phone. They asked him about his weight loss and, in quotes, "Who is she?" They would disappear for 15 minutes and would start over when they came back. He was getting the same questions in a different form. He was grilled and asked, in quotes, "So why did you do it?" end quote. At the end of the interview, the agent told him he did a good job. Nick told Chris he had been texting with a private investigator friend. Nick gave Chris some lawyer contact information upon the advice of the private investigator. Chris was appreciative and went to bed. Chris said he was planning on going to work until his dad arrived. On Wednesday, August 15, 2018, Chris told Nick that his work told him not to come in. Chris left the house at 9:30 a.m. to get his dad from the airport. Nick and Amanda went to work. Nick stated that he found it strange that Chris didn't know if Shanann had her Apple Watch since it wasn't in the charger. Nick knew that Shanann always wore her Apple Watch and always had her phone with her. Chris never made other comments over time about whether Shanann slept while wearing her Apple Watch. Nick stated that he would preserve all his call and text data. So that's the end of the interview with Nick and Amanda. One thing, there's obviously a lot here, a lot covered, and it's for you to interpret and to take in. But one thing I will say is, Nick and Amanda, I know they look back and they regret, offering their support and having him stay over, and I totally understand that. From every possible angle, I understand that. Feeling like they maybe had put their daughter in danger, that they were in danger that whole time. That's a scary thought. And I think one thing, though, that they might be missing is they may have had a really positive impact on the outcome of this whole case, right? They chose to believe him. They chose to support him, and they even offered up their home, which he took. Now, what might that have done? That may have helped Chris think that he may be getting away with it. right? They showed their support. Even after what he was telling them, they knew a lot of information. They still chose to believe him, express that to him, and not just in words, but in actions. And that may have had a positive impact on Chris continuing his story and continuing to think he's going to get away with it, and thus taking the polygraph. I'm sure they probably encouraged him to. They took him to the interviews, so they kind of helped the process along. And I hope that they didn't miss that. I hope we all take a second to recognize them for that, and appreciate the sacrifice that they truly made. And they all in the name of good intentions, all in the name of being good friends, and doing it for Shanann as much as doing it for Chris. They thought that they were helping, and I think they were, but maybe not in the way they realized or they expected. So they obviously have a very, very difficult and had a very difficult time with this. You can see their interview. If you haven't seen their interview in the park, it's really good. It's it shows you the type of people that they are, and I really highly encourage you to watch that if you haven't, just even out of respect for the role that they played. So I thank you for listening. We'll end there, which is page 373. Next page is just blank, and then we actually get into an interview with Chris's mistress next, as well as another Anadarko employee. So, in the loving memory of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, and may God bless the Rusek family and all those affected. Really, all those affected. God, we ask that you please bless them. This is The Diplomat, and I hope you have a great day.